Sienna Clark stood in a dark gas station parking lot, staring at 8 crumpled dollars in her hand. Her last $8, her daughter's breakfast money for tomorrow. Then she heard the sound, a man gasping for air. A massive Hell's Angel biker collapsed near his motorcycle, clutching his chest. His face went gray. He was dying right there on the pavement, and no one else was around to help. "Don't get involved!" the gas station attendant shouted from the doorway. "Those guys are nothing but trouble!" Sienna looked at the dying man, then at her $8. She thought about her daughter Maya waking up hungry tomorrow, but she couldn't just walk away. She ran inside, bought aspirin and water with her last $8, and knelt beside him. She saved his life without knowing who he was. What Sienna didn't know, that choice would change everything. Because the next morning, 100 motorcycles rolled up to her street. Let me take you back to the morning before that gas station. Before everything changed. Sienna's alarm went off at 5 a.m., like it did every single day. She dragged herself out of bed in the tiny apartment she shared with her 6-year-old daughter, Maya. The place was small, run down, in a neighborhood that had seen better days. But it was home. She walked into the kitchen and opened the cabinet. 1 box of cereal, almost empty. Half a carton of milk in the fridge. She poured the last bit into Maya's bowl and made it stretch as far as it would go. Maya came padding out in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Morning, Mommy." "Morning, baby." Sienna kissed the top of her head and set the bowl on the table. She didn't make one for herself. There wasn't enough. This was life now. Counting every dollar, stretching every meal, praying that nothing unexpected happened because there was no cushion, no safety net, nothing to fall back on. Sienna worked 2 jobs, mornings at the laundromat, folding strangers' clothes for $11 an hour. Evenings at a diner, serving truckers and late-night crowds, hustling for tips that sometimes added up to $20, sometimes less. Her car had broken down 3 weeks ago. She couldn't afford to fix it. So now she walked everywhere, miles to work, miles home, in worn-out sneakers with a hole in the left sole. And the bills kept coming. Rent was due in 3 days. She was $150 short. The landlord had already threatened eviction once. Maya's asthma inhaler needed refilling, $60 she didn't have. The electricity bill had an overdue notice taped to the fridge. But Sienna didn't complain. She'd learned a long time ago that complaining didn't pay the bills. Her grandmother had raised her with one simple rule. Kindness costs nothing, baby, and sometimes it's all we got to give. So Sienna smiled at her coworkers even when she was exhausted. She asked customers how their day was going, even when her feet ached so bad she could barely stand. She kept a little journal by her bed where she wrote 3 things she was grateful for every night, no matter how hard the day had been. That Tuesday started like every other day. She walked Maya to the neighbor's apartment before school, then headed to the laundromat. She folded clothes for 8 hours, her mind on autopilot. Jeans, towels, sheets, over and over. At 2 p.m., she clocked out and walked to the diner. Her shift didn't start until 3, but she liked to get there early, grab a coffee, sit in the back booth, and just breathe for a few minutes. Linda, her co-worker, a kind older woman who'd worked at the diner for 20 years, slid into the booth across from her. "You look tired, honey." "I'm always tired," Sienna said with a small smile. "You worked yourself to death for that little girl." "She's worth it." Linda patted her hand. "I know she is, but you gotta take care of yourself too, you hear me?" Sienna nodded, but they both knew she didn't have that luxury. Her evening shift was busy. Truckers, a few families, some teenagers getting late-night fries. She smiled, took orders, refilled coffee cups, and kept moving. By 10 p.m., when her shift ended, her tips added up to $23. She sat in the back room counting the cash on the table. $23 in tips, plus the $8.47 she'd had left from yesterday. $31.47 total. She needed to keep enough for the bus to work tomorrow. 47 cents. That left her with $31. She tucked 23 away for rent. That left $8 for Maya's breakfast and maybe something small for dinner tomorrow night. $8. She folded the bills carefully and put them in her pocket. Then she started the 2-mile walk home. It was late. The streets were quiet. Sienna was exhausted, but she kept her head up and kept moving. She decided to cut through the gas station parking lot on her way. There was a restroom there, and she needed to stop. That's when everything changed. That's when she heard the man gasping for air. And in that moment, Sienna Clark had a choice to make. A choice that would cost her everything she had. A choice that would save a life. A choice that would reveal who she really was when no one was watching. She had no idea that this one decision would change her life forever. Sienna pushed open the gas station restroom door and stepped back outside into the parking lot. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered and buzzed. It was just past 11 p.m., and the place was almost empty. That's when she saw him. A man, massive, probably 6'3", with a thick gray beard and arms covered in tattoos, leaned against a chrome motorcycle under one of the lights. He wore a black leather vest with patches all over it. Hell's Angels. Even from a distance, Sienna could see the skull logo. She'd heard stories about guys like him. Everyone had. Dangerous. Criminal. Stay away. She started walking toward the street, minding her own business. Then the man stumbled. His hand shot to his chest. His face twisted in pain. He dropped to one knee, gasping. Sienna stopped. The man collapsed onto the pavement, flat on his back. His breathing came in short, desperate bursts. His lips were turning blue. She stood there, frozen. Every instinct screamed at her to keep walking. This wasn't her problem. She had Maya to think about. She had enough trouble in her own life. But then she heard it, a sound that made her blood run cold. The man wasn't breathing anymore. His chest had stopped moving. "Hey!" Sienna shouted toward the gas station. "Hey, someone call 911!" The attendant, a white guy in his 30s, stepped outside with a cigarette in his hand. He looked at the man on the ground, then at Sienna. "Lady, you crazy? That's a Hell's Angel. Leave him alone. He's probably high on something." "He's having a heart attack," Sienna said, her voice rising. The attendant shrugged. "Not our problem. Those guys are nothing but trouble. Trust me, you don't want to get involved." An older man, maybe 60, white, wearing a trucker hat, walked out of the store with a bag of chips. He saw the scene and shook his head. He walked over to Sienna and grabbed her arm gently. "Miss, listen to me. Don't get involved. People like that? They're dangerous. You've got a kid to think about, don't you? I can tell. Just walk away." Sienna pulled her arm back. "A man is dying." The trucker shook his head again, muttered something under his breath, and walked to his car. He drove off without looking back. Sienna stood there alone in the parking lot. The attendant went back inside, leaving her with the dying man. She looked down at him. His chest wasn't moving. His face was gray. She thought about her grandmother. Years ago, her grandmother had collapsed on a city sidewalk. A stroke. People walked past her. No one stopped. By the time someone finally called for help, it was too late. Sienna had been 12 years old when she got that phone call. She'd never forgotten it. She dropped to her knees beside the man. Sir, can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered open just barely. He tried to speak, but only a wheeze came out. "Heart, meds, forgot." Sienna pulled out her phone. 1 bar of signal, 10% battery. She dialed 911. The call dropped. "Damn it!" She stood up and ran toward the gas station. She burst through the door. "Call an ambulance right now! He's dying out there!" The attendant rolled his eyes but picked up the phone behind the counter. Sienna didn't wait. She scanned the shelves, grabbed a bottle of aspirin and a bottle of water. She ran to the counter and slammed them down. "How much?" $6.50. She pulled the $8 from her pocket, Maya's breakfast money, and handed it over. The attendant gave her $1.50 in change. She didn't wait for a receipt. She ran back outside. The man was still on the ground, barely conscious. Sienna twisted the cap off the aspirin bottle, shook 2 tablets into her hand, opened the water, and knelt beside him. Hey, look at me. I need you to chew these. Can you do that? He opened his mouth weakly. She placed the tablets on his tongue. Chew. Come on. He chewed slowly, wincing. She held the water bottle to his lips, and he took a small sip. Help is coming, she said, her hand on his shoulder. You're going to be okay. Just stay with me. His hand reached up and grabbed hers. His grip was weak, but it was there. What's your name? He whispered, his voice barely audible. Sienna. Sienna Clark. Sienna. He coughed. You saved my life. Not yet. But I'm trying. In the distance, sirens wailed. They were getting closer. Then, out of nowhere, another motorcycle roared into the parking lot. A younger guy, maybe 30, also wearing a vest, jumped off and ran over. Hawk! Oh my God, Hawk! He dropped to his knees on the other side of the man. He looked at Sienna, his eyes wide with shock. You helped him? He needed help, Sienna said simply. The younger guy stared at her like she'd just done something impossible. Most people cross the street when they see us. Sienna didn't respond. She just kept her hand on Hawk's shoulder until the ambulance pulled into the lot. The paramedics rushed over with a stretcher and equipment. One of them looked at Sienna. Did you give him aspirin? Yes, 2 tablets, maybe 3 minutes ago. The paramedic nodded. Smart move. You probably just saved his life. They loaded Hawk onto the stretcher. He reached out and grabbed Sienna's wrist one more time. His eyes locked onto hers. Tell them, Hawk sent you. She had no idea what that meant. The younger guy stood up as the ambulance doors closed. He walked over